What are APIs and how do they boost our productivity? My name is Raphael. Together we will explore APIs. But before we go ahead, don't forget to hit the subscribe and like button below the video. With that, let's get started. APIs is a new feature coming soon to Banana Cake Pop 5. However, if you are already interested in trying it out today, go to bananacakepop.com and choose between the App Insider version and the Web Insider version. In this video, we will use the Web Insider version. To use APIs, we need to be signed in. Because I'm already signed in, I go straight to the Document Explorer. Before we create our first API, let me explain you why we need APIs. When starting with a new GraphQL API, we often start with one document. The cool thing about GraphQL is that we can put all our operations for a particular GraphQL API into a single document. However, as the document grows, we usually split it into several documents for organizational purposes. But because the connection settings are assigned directly to a document so far, keeping the connection settings for each document pointing to the same GraphQL API in sync becomes cumbersome. Let's have a look at the Document Explorer, which already contains two documents pointing to the same GraphQL API. One document, for example, has already configured the authorization settings, as you can see here, and one document has not configured the authorization settings yet. Thus, we must apply the authorization settings to avoid getting empty results when executing operations. Keeping the connection settings of two documents in sync is already cumbersome. Imagine now to keep 5, 10 or even 15 documents in sync. Therefore, we are introducing APIs, which are collections of documents sharing the same connection settings. Instead of applying the connection settings on a per document base, we apply them once to an API. Let me show you how that works. First, we will create an API and give it a name like, for example, foobar. Then let's use the same endpoint as the existing documents and let's configure the authorization settings. Let's apply that. Now let's create our first document. And as we already can see, the connection settings are applied. So we can go ahead and write actually our first query, which is, let's grab some information like the name of the currently signed in user, hit the run button, and as we can see, we are already authorized. What actually happens when we move our existing document named bar into the newly created API? As we know, the bar document has not yet configured the authorization settings. So if we run this query, we are not authorized. We get null for the currently signed in user, which is correct because we have no authorization token yet. And when we move the bar document inside the API, our API connection settings, of course, are applied directly to the document. If we go now to the connection settings of the bar document and choose the authorization tab, we can see that the authorization settings are already given. So let's hit the run button again, and as we can see, now we are authorized. This is pretty cool, right? What happens if we move the bar document out of the API? Let's move it back to the crypto workshop folder and see what happens. Move there. If we now go to the connection settings and choose the authorization tab, we can see that the authorization settings are still given, because when we move out a document from an API into a simple folder or into the root, for example, then we will copy the connection settings of the API and apply these settings directly to the document. If we now change the authorization settings again and save them, We will not change the API's connection settings because the document is detached from the API. As we can see, the API settings are still configured with the authorization settings. There's one little side note actually, which is you cannot create an API inside an API or inside a substructure of an API. Also, you cannot move an API inside an API or inside an API substructure. But you can create anything else in there, like documents, media files, or folders, as you're used to in a simple folder or in the root. So now that we know what APIs are and how they work, let's use them. Tell us what you like about APIs or don't like. Help us find the last minute showstopper before going live. By the way, environments coming soon to Banana Cake Pop 6. Cannot wait to show you the first bits of it. See you next time.